What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian and Ozzy podcast. I am the Martian. I'm joined here by Ozzy. How are we doing this week, Ozzy?
A little low energy this week, to be honest. Been just grinding a lot of MMA overall, just between UFC and some other events. Feeling a little burnt out, but hopefully, we get through this little patch here, and then we got those two pay-per-views back to back. And one being in my home state of the great old New York.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean about the burnout. We're in the middle of, I think, like 10 weeks in a row of straight UFC cards, and there's contender series every week. There's Bellator, PFL's coming up soon. I mean, there's just nonstop fights, not to mention the LFA fights, a lot of boxing going on. So I definitely understand what you mean. Not the most inspiring card either this week, but I still feel like we'll have some fun talking about a few of these matchups. There's definitely some bets to be made. And before we get into this week's card, just a quick recap of last week's card, the Dern versus Rodriguez card. Only 9 fights ended up happening. I only profited about zero point 0.2 units on my official track bets, but I'm happy to end the week in the profit. And you had a pretty solid week, though, Ozzy. What were your results last week?
Yeah, another week in the green, just under 5 units bet in total, two and a quarter units in profit. Hit on Damon Jackson in the big way. That was definitely a good cash there. Had some really nice early numbers on him, and he won that fight as I expected him. Many others did too. Steve Garcia, and then a few props there. The one time that I tried to do a parlay, I put in the women's MMA juice in there. It doesn't hit. And then I had a little stab on Nicolau by submission, and that didn't get there. But at 5-1, I thought that was a good bet there.
Yeah, you won one. I think our only head-to-head matchup last week with betting on Nicolau. I bet on Elliott, and
Although I did say I told you personally that I was flipping, but on the podcast I was more siding with Elliot. But later in the week, you know me. Sometimes I'm like going back into these fights and flip flopping a little bit. But that was a great fight to bet live too, because Nicolau after round one was like plus 200. Then Elliot after round two was plus 200. So if you have availability of those live markets, definitely value to be had a little bit.
yeah, live lines are big every week. They save me from half my Mackenzie Dern loss because there were some pretty good live lines available on
Mhm.
Rodriguez there. But that's enough about last week. 11 fights this week for our 11th episode of the podcast, and we're going to start things off in the women's strawweight division where we have Ariane Carneloss-Nunes as the minus 164 favorite. Isatel Nunes making a UFC debut plus 134. Um, I'll start this one out because it's kind of I think it's going to be kind of a fun fight, honestly. I enjoy sometimes analyzing these lower level women's fights like this. Nunes hasn't fought in about 3 years, but the woman does look like a solid offensive striker. Does not seeing much defense or any grappling, but I do think she has solid offensive technique. And Carlos Soli got dropped by Liang in her last fight and got outstruck badly by Angela Hill. And Carlos Soli just looks like kind of a punching bag on the feet. And I think that when the fight's on the feet at distance, Nunes is actually going to have the advantage there. And Carneloss probably wants to get the fight to the floor. But if you rewatch her fight against Liang, that crazy fight that had a lot of grappling, Carneloss didn't actually hit a takedown in that fight. There were a lot of just sloppy exchanges that ended up on the floor. And I thought Carneloss looked pretty weak in the grappling there. She's lucky she just had a terrible opponent who put up really little to no resistance and faded very quickly in that fight. But I think it's kind of crazy that Carneloss is this much of a favorite after how sloppy she looked in her last fight. And even though there are a lot of unknowns about Nunes, uh, very long layoff for her, no UFC experience. I think she's the side to be on here at plus money because I just can't trust Carneloss at that favorite price. So I don't disagree with the stab on Nunes. I think she's the better striker here, has a really good chance to win the fight if it stays at distance. So I'll pick Nunes here as the underdog to pull off the striking decision upset. And what about you, Ozzy? What are you thinking about this? You think this is kind of a fun matchup as well as
Uh,
like me, or what?
well, so the line here has been coming in a little bit, and Carnelossi, right? You definitely wouldn't have passed Anik and Florian's pronunciation test. Carnelossi's, her striking, like she got immediately dropped by Liang in that last fight. Like she looks like, she walks onto punches, pretty often. But I mean, Nunes, if you look at that last fight she had at one championship, like literally nothing happened. Like she just stared at that girl. I can't believe I spent
Yeah,
six
15
minutes.
minutes watching that
Five.
shit.
Well, I watched that on double speed, so
Oh,
and
for
then
sure, yeah, you gotta
I was
skip through.
pounding. I was pounding that skip button because literally nothing was happening. So I think I might have spent 4.5 minutes on that one. But literally nothing happened. She was just staring at her, and I know she looks like she could, put out some damage and stuff like that. But I just can't trust this girl to do that much. Carnelosi is pretty strong. You know,
Hold up, your connection's, taking a break. Say it again?
um to uncork, a bunch of shots and land. But I think if Carnelosi takes her down, her ground game, Nunez's ground game just looked too weak against Lee for me to be confident in her. But so I'm not knocking too much of the dog price play on her because Carnelosi is a bit sloppy on the feet and is hittable, and on the ground doesn't have the best control. But I just can't get too much behind her just because of the long layoff and the fact that she looks to be a bit inactive when the fight is at distance. So I'll pick Carnelosi, but no wager for me, especially now that at that minus 150 range that it's at right now.
Yeah, you brought up some good points, and you did cut out for a second there. Sorry if anybody hears a little bit of connection issues on Ozzy's end of this podcast. We'll try to do our best to minimize that. But yeah, she did look extremely tentative in that one fight. She did get pretty dominated on the ground by Angela Lee. So that those are worrisome. I was pretty skeptical of her going into her footage. Like I watched her fights first, and I thought this woman's no good. But then I rewatched the Carnelossi footage, and I realized how bad she was, and I flipped back to going on the dog here. So I'm glad we're disagreeing on this one to have some fun, and that's going to bring us on to the next fight. Very fun matchup in the bantamweight division. We got Davis-Batgerel as the minus 188 favorite, taking on Brandon Davis plus 152. What are your thoughts on Brandon Davis coming back to the UFC here, Ozzy?
This should be a good scrap. Brandon Davis fought some good competition in the UFC. I think he's always been in between on what he's better at, if it's like striking or if he should be implementing his ground game. He went outside the UFC, picked up 4 wins, albeit against some soft competition, and now he's back now. The only fights that he won in the UFC are against Steve Peterson and Randy Costa, but the other losses are pretty solid. I think here it's gonna be a pretty solid. I think it's be a little bit about the side because he is up here, although I want to know just
Ho-
it's
Hold up. Say that again. I heard some static.
Yeah, I think that Davis is, pretty durable, but being at 135, you never know. It's definitely never going to be an easy cut for him. Dana just kind of looks for the knockout a little bit too much for my liking a bit. And then on the ground, if Davis can change some of these takedowns, I think he might have the ability to take Dana down. But Dana has great volume on the feet. If you look at that fight against Alatang, he put out tons of volume in all 3 rounds, although he was controlled in that last round, and he definitely has some power. But I think Davis here can mix up the low kicks, some strikes to the head, and then dive in on some takedowns here and give Dana some trouble there. In the clinch, I think Davis might be able to be the more active and stronger guy and use the underhooks and some of his knees in there to stifle some of Dana trying to get away and stay in space. And I think this will be the first fight that Dana has in the smaller octagon, which I think will be a little bit to Davis's advantage. So the price is coming down a little bit. I think I see why. I might get involved here on the Davis side, even though I am a big fan of Dana. I had a huge bet on him against Natividad. So I think he's his side here. But I think it's going to be a pretty good fight between two guys that are pretty well matched up here.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of those points. I'm definitely going to be on the Brandon Davis side here. Already have a bet tracked on him. I took that plus 160. And you brought up a lot of the good offensive weapons that Davis has. That calf kick of his is really good. Some good knees up the middle. The guy's just a solid offensive striker, and he throws all different strikes at you: knees, elbows, punches, kicks. I mean, he really mixes it up well. While Batgerel is more of just a boxer. And I think Batgerel just had two really easy matchups back to back, got quick round one knockouts in both of those fights. And we haven't really seen him tested since that Alatang fight. So I feel like the market is getting a little too high on Batgerel here. Davis coming wasn't in the UFC recently. So I think there's like a lot of factors coming into this that's giving us a really good line on Davis here. So I definitely like Davis. I think he does have the grappling advantage. I didn't like what I saw. Um, off of Batgirl's back when he got taken down by Alatang there. So I think that Davis has the grappling advantage here. I think he has the capability to make this fight close in the striking. And I think he also has the more or the more experience against higher level competition. And Davis is pretty durable too. He's eaten some big shots and stayed in fights like the Randy Costa fight. And I think that he should be able to eat Batgirl's best shots here and make the fight really competitive. And I'll pick him to win. I'll pick him to win by a decision as the dog here. So I'm going with two dogs in a row. That's going to take us to the next fight, featherweight division. Another pretty fun matchup. We have Ludovic Klein at the minus 340 price tag, taking on Nate the Train Landwehr plus 260. I was really high on Landwehr coming into the UFC. I thought he was really fun fighter. He had a lot of fun regional fights over in Russia, but I'm slowly realizing the guy is just way too defensively void. He's so hittable at all times in the fight. And also his chin seems to be kind of depleting a little bit. He ate some big head kicks in the Kolsnik fight back in Russia and just walked through them. But then we started to see him get kind of wobbled by Julian Erosa in his most recent fight. So I think Landwehr is going to be in some real trouble here, considering he's fighting another precise, accurate striker like Ludovic Klein, who is known for landing head kicks and has knocked a lot of opponents out with head kicks. I think like 5 out of his past 6 wins in a row have come by head kick knockout or something crazy like that. And I just think it's a pretty easy fight to bet. Don't bet Landwehr before the fight. I think that Ludovic's going to probably give him real issues in round one, possibly even knock him out. And if Landwehr can survive that early round one power, then maybe look to throw a small live bet on Landwehr. If he can make it out of round one, he does have the potential, the volume to make it close. It's really just a matter of his chin. And I have a hard time putting much faith in his chin. So the line here, I guess it's about right. If it gets out of round one, it's going to get a lot closer, though. So I wouldn't advise parlaying Klein or anything here. I think if you're going to play Klein, just stab the early knockout prop. So what are you thinking about this matchup, Ozzy?
Also,
Hold up. Your connection is no good. Start over.
I also like Nate coming into the UFC, and he's come in. He's been knocked out 2 times by knees, and you did see Ludovic. He's been training these flying knees, so I think he's gonna come out big. Like he often does. The issue in Nate is he holds his hands like by his nipples like all the time, and his head is just like on a skewer there. It just doesn't move. Like it's like just super stiff. It just moves like with his entire body as opposed to like him moving his neck around. It's like almost like his neck was fused or something. I don't know. It's really strange. But I think he has some skills here. I think he probably has a little bit better. I mean, I don't know. I think the knock on him earlier was people were saying like, "Hey, like this guy's got no balance." I think that's what they were saying when he was fighting Elkins. Like the Elkins would be able to get easy takedowns, but that wasn't really the case that much there. So I don't think that Ludovic will be able to get those like bailout takedowns that he was going after against Trezano, which is something that was kind of like was like a red flag to me there that although this guy he poses himself as like this master striker and stuff, he was shooting in on Trezano a ton there and didn't look that comfortable when once Trezano was able to start coming forward on him. So I think that the same thing could happen here against I almost call this guy Elkins against Landwehr. But the thing is, Landwehr early on could just get hit so much that, like you said, it's probably not that wise to get on him pre-fight. But I don't love the Ludovic side. Obviously, it's gonna keep being parlayed. This guy's only been to like 2 decisions or
Hold up. It's connections lagging out again. Try again.
Can you hear me now? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's all
said
good.
that Ludovic got rear naked choked by Aiden Lee, and if you saw Aiden Lee against Aaron Pico, definitely not a ground specialist there. So, I think this fight could get competitive for sure. I'll pick Klein, but there's no chance I'd have any money on him at all at this -300 price.
Yeah, I honestly hope Nate can find a way to pull off the upset. I mean, the guy is such a fun fighter to watch when he's screaming and yelling there. The Darren Elkins fight is a great fight, fun fight to watch. So I hope he can somehow pull off the upset. But you might as well just wait after the first few minutes to bet him here. Could be a good live bet though. So next fight, we actually just had a line come out for this within the past 5 minutes. So insane timing by Best Fight Odds to release that. In the women's flyweight division, we have Godinez coming in on short notice, taking on Luana-Carolina. And the line we have here is Godinez -285, Carolina +225. So first reaction to hearing that line, Ozzy, what are your thoughts?
I mean, Godinez is just like I told these guys, we're in the Godinez era. They're not giving this girl fights like this for no reason. Like there's a reason she's gonna start getting pushed. She's got that Canadian and Mexican combo there. You don't see that very often. And she's taken on here. What's her name?
Luana.
Carolina. Yeah, Carolina, who her last fight again. I'm be honest, I didn't watch that. I obviously did not watch her tape here because I didn't know she was getting an opponent. In her last fight against what's her name?
Botello. Yeah.
Polyana, right? Polyana,
Yep,
Botello.
that's it.
Um, tons of people were on Polyana. She was like -200 there. And she ended up tiring out, I think, after maybe taking her down or winning early, if I remember correctly. And then Luana was able to start turning up on her. I think she got some top position. But I think should be
Hold up. One sec. One sec. Going through a static period. Try again.
stronger than her, have
We got like
the way better hands,
here.
have the way better hands, and be able to take her down. And on the ground, I think she has the ground advantage here. Carolina has some jiu-jitsu background, but I don't think positionally she's very solid. Godinez just needs to watch out for some of the kicks because this is a weight, is 10 pounds off of her normal weight class, and she'll be at a distinct height advantage. But I think she'll try to get the wrestling going and be able to get the clinch and take Carolina down. But she needs to be careful from those knees and stuff because Carolina has surprised people on a number of occasions.
Now I'm gonna be a bit contrarian here. I don't really like this matchup for Godinez. I was impressed by her in her last fight. Just last week. And she had all this momentum at 115. I feel like it's kind of stupid for her to go up to 125 because nobody knows who Carolina is. It's not going to be like some prestigious win. So I feel like it's kind of a risky career move for her to do this. But looking at, you said the height discrepancy. I mean, Carolina is going to be 4 inches taller and 8 inches longer. I mean, we're going to be at a big size disadvantage here for Godinez. And, I do think she is the better overall fighter. She's going to have much more success in her natural weight class, but I just get bad vibes about this matchup for some reason. Godinez did show that she has some grappling skill in her last fight versus Juarez, but I mean, Juarez, not a UFC level opponent. I told you guys coming in there that the woman, all she was a decent offensive striker, and she really wasn't going to pose much of a problem for Godinez, and she posed no resistance whatsoever. So I feel like Godinez is getting overrated here. -285 is way too high. I mean, this is practically the same line that Poliana Botello just was, and Botello is a more natural 125er. I think she had more grappling tape out there, and I just feel like this line's a bit of an overreaction. So I honestly expect the line to close a little bit tighter here. I don't think that Carolina's gonna stay at over plus 200 for long. I just think that, like I said, the size disadvantage is going to be big for her. And Carolina is decent in the clinch. You were right about that Botello fight. She did get taken down and lose round 1, but Carolina just kind of leaned on her in the clinch and outstruck Botello in rounds 2 and 3 in the clinch. So if Godinez can get in similar positions, she's going to be in trouble with that size disadvantage against the clinch here. So I think Carolina Carolina by decision probably is going to be worth a stab here. It'll probably be plus 3 or 400. So yeah, definitely stab on Carolina here on the short notice matchup. And that's going to move us to probably my favorite fight on the card in the welterweight division. We have Ramazan-Emeev as the minus 280 favorite. Actually, I'll quote the best bet online line for this one. Ramazan-Emeev minus 315. Danny Roberts plus 265 on the comeback. So pretty wide line there, Ozzy. What are you thinking about this welterweight matchup?
Yeah, so you're getting the exact same price on Danny Roberts as you got Zawada last time, and you saw that fight was kind of a struggle for Ameev overall. He got his leg kicked. He was struggling to consolidate top time. And the thing with Danny Roberts, so is he's pretty competent. He's been training at these Black Zillions first, I think, and with Henry Hooft, he followed them to wherever they're at now, wherever they call their gym now, Sanford. So he's been getting high level training. He hasn't been staying over there in England. He doesn't have that many bad losses on his record. But the thing with Danny Roberts is he's well rounded. He has power. He knows the ground game a little bit, but he's just a floppy guy. Like he's like a noodle. He'll try to like offensively wrestle and then he'll just end up on his back or he'll like slip or he'll fall. And against Ameev, you can't. You could beat Ameev. You can't beat him. You can't make the fight difficult for him. But if you make mistakes, like even
Hold up, hold on, take a 5 second break.
if you make mistakes like some of these guys have been making, this guy he won't give you too much more opportunity. So I do think that on the feet, Roberts should be able to stay at range somewhat. I don't think he's that easy to hold against the fence. He'll use the Muay Thai clinch. He'll dig underhooks. I think he's athletic enough that if Ameev is going for leg attacks like singles and doubles, he'll be able to defend those a bit. And then he does have some power, definitely more power than the last few opponents that Ameev fought. So I do think this is a wide line. I think the bookies, they just haven't been made to pay on any of these juiced up Ameev lines. So, I think you just got to keep hitting these underdogs, as they come. And Danny Roberts, very capable. He's been off for a while. So I would think that he's trying to, get this win streak going. But it's been 2 years since the guy's fought. I don't know what he's been up to too much. I don't know where he's really training at all that much. But the same thing for Ameev. I don't remember. I think he fought earlier this year. But, I think that the fight would be competitive. I think on the feet, Roberts would be able to land that left hand. Maybe use his kicks, those front kicks a little bit. But Ameev does have a little bit of an underrated overhand. And then obviously when he's on top, he's, the Russian coast takes into effect and he'll just, lay and pray for a bit. So, the thing with Danny Roberts is he's pretty active. So I do think he's a good underdog. I know that you like him a lot, so I'll let you take it away from here and give your thoughts on it.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of good points about both these guys already, and a little bit what I talked about earlier. I think a lot of factors are going into making this line really good. Ameev has been winning his decisions lately. The long layoff from Danny Roberts, but the guy's coming off of an impressive knockout win over Imadaev. He was able to get some grappling going in that fight, had some back and forth grappling exchanges, and he eventually was smashing the inside leg of Imadaev and then knocked him out with that left hand. So I definitely think that Danny Roberts is the better striker than Ameev. He's much more damaging. I mean, Ameev doesn't hurt anything. He doesn't land hard strikes. He doesn't go for ground and pound. He doesn't look to submit anybody. The guy just constantly cruises to decisions. And I'm not seeing like many improvements from the guy at all. I mean, I think he's the same fighter he always has been. And I think that Danny Roberts has a lot more potential to actually come in here and show like a level up and show some increased skill coming off of that long layoff, coming off a 2 year layoff. And he has been training with good guys a little bit all over the place. But I remember before Danny Roberts' fight against Claudio Silva, I had some faith in him there. He did eventually lose that fight, but I just think that Roberts is a pretty capable defensive grappler. He knows what he's doing, how to defend takedowns. He knows how to get up off a bottom. He knows how to stay safe in defensive positions. And I don't think the guy's a terrible grappler at all. So I think the only way that Ameev is justifying minus 300 here is with lots of top time. I'm talking like 2 or 3 minutes of every single round, because whenever this fight is at distance, I expect the Roberts to be having the big moments, landing the better strikes. And I think that Roberts has a really good chance to pull off the upset here. I'm going to be on him for over 1 unit, I think. I mean, I think this line is getting so high and inflated that you got to just keep increasing that bet amount. I was considering betting Roberts at plus 200, and now that he's almost at plus 300, I'm going to be betting more on him. So I like Roberts a lot here. I think he has the finishing upside, and I think he honestly could win rounds here. I mean, if David Zawada made that fight close for it to be a split decision, Stolze almost won a round off of Emeev. I think that Roberts is more than capable of pulling off the decision victory here. So I like Roberts for a bet here. And that's going to take us to the last fight on the prelims. Another fun fight, another interesting underdog we got. Bruno Silva coming in at minus 155. Andrew Sanchez coming back plus 135. And you can start this one off, Ozzy, again. What are your thoughts on this one?
Probably say this is probably my favorite, one of the fights I'm looking forward to the most in this fight, on this card, I should say. A fight like as many as who killed one determined the best. I guess you want to look at that. So two movies here I think who are pretty talented overall. Bruno Silva has had a ton of fights before he's reached UFC. Is a proven finisher. I think he's got 17 KOs over his like 20 wins or whatever it is. And then Andrew Sanchez, former tough winner, a collegiate wrestler, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like purple belt, brown belt. I'm not sure what it is, but has had some accolades in that. And he's moved over to a new camp for this fight. He's over at AKA, getting trained by Javier Mendez, Khabib, all those guys there. And I think it's a good move for him. I've always been high on Andrew Sanchez. I think some matchmaking has been interesting for him a little bit. I think he had cardio issues early on in his career. When he got that Marvin Vettori fight, I was pretty surprised at that matchmaking. And then he had to fight Muradov in a fight or two ago. But I think here in this fight, it's one that he could fight to his strengths a little bit. When I'm watching Bruno Silva, I think the things that stand out for me is he's definitely a knockout artist. He has power, in all his strikes. But he's a guy who he kind of like pulls out what we like to call those mean finishes, or those finishes that kind of come out of nowhere. He's got some good kicks. I think some good knees as well. I think if he's hurting Andrew Sanchez, it'll come somewhere in the clinch, or maybe like an uppercut or something like that. But what I like about Andrew Sanchez, he has a pretty good in and out movement. I think he has maybe some of that karate background a little bit. His hands have been a little low for my liking, especially in a matchup here against Silva. But I think he's gonna be able to get his wrestling going. Somewhat. If you look at some of Bruno Silva's losses, he's got one loss to one guy where he's just getting absolutely ran through the whole time. Like every takedown this guy shot on him, he ran through him on a number of occasions. Had the back.
Rimbone, is that guy's name? Rimbone or
Yeah,
something?
yeah, it was a number of years ago, but he was just, plowing through him with every takedown that he tried, on the clinch him, and then eventually submit.
Hold up. Take a second break. Go ahead.
He's on his shots, and then also with his hands as well. He's good at what we call going third, where he'll like start to like feint a little bit, wait for your reaction, and then hit you, or hit you after you finish, on the counter. And Bruno Silva, if you see, he covers up a lot. He'll have like his hands. He'll be in the retreat. He's not the best counter puncher, which I think will be his opportunity to hurt Sanchez. If Sanchez is like overcommitting on some strikes, and then you saw that Bruno in that Wellington fight. He got hugged quite a bit. He got taken down a little bit, and he was, getting up, and Turman was, complacent, to just go to the ground, go with his back, which I don't think Andrew Sanchez will be. I know sharp money on both sides of this, so there's a little bit of a battle going on here. And to be honest, if you look at the line movement, the Bruno Silva side is winning right now, but I don't think that's the right side. I like Andrew Sanchez here. I've always liked him, and I think that here he's going to be able to fight to his strengths, keep this fight on his script, and have more ways to win. I think the biggest knock on him is the cardio, but I think he's gonna be able to fight more efficiently with a better game plan that he's had in the past, and is at a better camp, for his strength. So I like him for in a big, not in a big way, but I like him here, as a plus 135 dog for sure. And let's see it play out, because I'm very interested in how the fight will take shape as a whole.
Yeah, I hate to echo too many of Ozzy's same points, but he brought up something really good about the training camp. Actually hadn't realized this, but some pictures of him training recently with Luke Rockhold and Islam Mamedov, Duran Win. He's even getting some wrestling in with Mason Fowler, DC, Yuri Simones. A lot of good grapplers, a lot of big guys, and I think that moving over there is a really good move. I'm glad you brought that up, Ozzy. But I was on Wellington Turman in the first fight, and I thought that he did do the things I wanted him to do. He was shooting takedowns. He had the back take. Just obviously fell off in pretty embarrassing fashion there. But I don't think that Silva is really that good at anything. I think the only thing he's really good at is ground and pound. I mean, the guy does have some vicious power in his ground and pound, but his stand up is choppy. His takedown defense isn't good. He's not a great grappler. I mean, I think the guy's just some athletic freak with insane power. I think he's kind of a worse version of Jiri Prochaska, honestly. And
Whoa.
Andrew Sant. I mean, yeah, I mean, Jiri's way better than this guy, but you know what I mean? Like he's got Jiri's got some real skill though, so maybe I'm a little unfair with that. But Sanchez, I mean, I just think he's got the better technique, the better skill in all areas. I think he's a better boxer. He's a much more traditional fighter who can fight with like a consistent pace. And if Andrew Sanchez wants to here, I think he should be able to hit takedowns. And I think keeping top position is going to be hard. Silva does like to explode, but I mean, Sanchez can just wear on him against the fence, hit takedowns, box him up at range. And I like Sanchez here as a dog too. And, plus one, I was considering betting him at plus 120, plus 115, but, the line's going up. So you might as well just wait and see where this line's going to go. It seems like it keeps going in Bruno Silva's favor. And, I like Andrew Sanchez here as well. Ozzy almost said he's big. I think somewhere in between small and big, a medium sized bet on Sanchez is warranted here because, I don't know. I just think the market is still way too heavy on this Bruno Silva guy, and I don't think the guy is too skilled or has much of a process as a fighter. So I'm down to fade him again, and I like the plus money on Andrew Sanchez.
In my power rankings, I've always had Sanchez really high. I have him as close to top 15 middleweight, on any given day, and I think he's gonna look good in this fight, man. I feel I'm confident in him.
Yeah, and he's coming off a loss as well in his last fight. I think that's part of the reason why we're getting a
Yeah,
good
he
line
he
on
won
him.
his last fight, but he got knocked out by Muradov in that counter card, and then he came back and knocked out Andrew. Or am I mixing up the
No,
order?
no, yeah, that was after. Yeah, you're
My bad, my bad, my bad. Yeah, so
yeah.
he
So
got knocked out
that's
by
part.
Muradov in his last fight. Yeah.
Oh, and talk about that Turman knockout. Absolutely vicious knockout. I mean, the dude just lands like 8 punches in a row at one point and just sends Turman to another dimension. I mean, great knockout from
You see that
Sanchez.
Turman fight? That's what I'm talking about with some of his counter ability and how he was beating Turman to the punch and some of the angles. And then in that Murata fight, it was just a guy who is a very very talented boxer that he wasn't able to get that off on. But Bruno Silva, he lets you get in on him both in the striking department and in the grappling department.
Yep. So we're both in agreement here on Sanchez, liking him, and we're going to move on to the main card here. And we got 6 fights down already. No, no, no. We have 5 fights down already. 6 left. No, who gives a shit? So we're gonna move on to Marquez minus 260, Jordan Wright plus 220. I'll start this one off, and I like the Beverly Hills Ninja here, man. Plus 220 against Julian Marquez. I'm always down to take that. Another guy here, Marquez. I just don't think he's that good. I think the market is always overrating this guy. I mean, he was minus 170, minus 185 to Maki Pitolo. He looked like the underdog in that fight. Maki Pitolo ran out of gas, and I mean, I guess the one thing that Marquez does good is aggression, and he knows how to pour it on. He knows how to find finishes. I'll give him credit there. He is good at that, but I don't think his distance striking is very good. I mean, the guy's not a good defensive grappler. I mean, the guy had a very competitive round with Sam Alvey in his last fight, and Sam Alvey's chin just looked very depleted at that 185 weight class, and Marquez was able to get him out of there. But I think the distance striking exchanges between these two guys are going to be really close. I mean, Jordan Wright is a skilled distance striker. He has some power in his shots. He knows how to mix in a high kick, some good knees in there. And I think he has the power to really put Marquez in bad spots here. So I think we're going to see back and forth striking exchanges. And I think there's a good chance that Wright hurts Marquez here and maybe he's able to translate it into a finish. I mean, if the fight goes late, I do kind of have to favor the cardio and the output and aggression of Marquez. Another good attribute about Marquez is his cardio. It is good. Wright's isn't so proven in terms of the cardio, but I don't think we haven't seen anything necessarily bad from Wright in terms of cardio. I think he won a fight late into the second round versus Gabriel Checo. I don't think there's any like evidence of Wright having bad cardio out there per se. So I just think this line is too wide. I don't think that Marquez is skilled enough and has enough ways to win to be minus 260 here, especially early on in the fight. I think that it might get to like evens in the live line and maybe you can trade out in the live line, but plus 220 for Wright, who I expect to have a good round one. I think he's worth a small bet here. So what are your thoughts? First fight on the main card here, Ozzy?
Yeah, man, people definitely been seeming this. I think when they saw that minus 175, they got, their eyes started getting, wide. We're in a juice era nowadays, so I think people are getting a little bit overzealous here. This is a little bit of too wide of a line for me to be interested in Julian Marquez, just because at range, this guy doesn't really jab all that often. Like I thought Sam Alvey's gonna win that fight, and it's a very disappointing performance overall from him. Wright is gonna have a 5-inch reach advantage. I think he'll be a little bit quicker than Marquez. Marquez is a little plodding, a little slow overall. You know,
Hold on, take a 10-second.
Maki Pitolo.
You're
No,
good.
still. In that
You're
Maki
good.
Pitolo fight, he just couldn't get off on Maki at all. Maki was able to time him really, really easily, and he was having just a hard time landing any shots overall on him, and just kept getting, put in the clinch and grounded and stuff. So, I'm interested to see what Wright's approach is. Is he going to skirt around, the octagon and, look to fight at range? Is he going to mix it up a lot in the clinch? Wright has shown a pretty good chin, and I don't think that Julian is like some big, huge hitter. He's finished, he's got 3 submission wins, his last 3 wins all by submission. So I think right here, if this gets a little wider, I think I'll just have to make a play on him out of principle. Julian is very, very tough, but I do think he fights pretty stupid overall. He doesn't really fight to his strengths that often. And Wright overall, I do think has some skills, but has not been very deep into fights. Most of his finishes are in the first round, but he's pretty dynamic. He finds the chin, he finds chokes, he finds the off button, whether you like it or not. And he showed that he doesn't, quit like that. Buckley was hitting him with some bombs, and he was in there until he finally got turned off. And he's even fought at higher weight classes as well. So I don't see why people would be that inclined to lay this kind of juice on Jordan Wright. Excuse me, on Julian Marquez. It's purely a fade on Jordan Wright. I feel, and I don't think it's that warranted. I could see under minus 200, but now where we're going here, I don't think that Marquez poses that many skill advantages on Wright that you could feel really good at this price.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of these favorites just getting overjuiced based on the past few weeks, and I think like this card is going to turn around the juice here. I think we're going to get some dogs cashing on this card. And you brought up a good point about Jordan's chin. I don't think the guy's chin is that bad. I mean, I know he got knocked out by Buckley and by Hernandez in the Contender Series, but those guys are like relentless pressure boxers, and I just don't think that Marquez is that type of guy. And I think that Wright's going to surprise some people here. I think the market is kind of low on this guy. That's going to take us to the next fight, which is in the women's flyweight division, a fight that was rebooked from a few weeks back. We have Manon Fiorot as the minus 230 favorite, taking on Maria Bueno-Silva, plus 195 dog. This line's a bit closer than it was just a few weeks ago. What are your thoughts on this one, Oz? You can start this one off.
This is a very, very good fight. It was interesting that it got so low. It got to like minus 175 at one point. Two girls who I do think are very, very good fighters in that flyweight division. Fiorot has not had much competition in the UFC thus far. She fought Leonardo, and then my poor girl Tabitha Ricci on short notice there. But this girl, she has some good striking. I like her left hand. She does throw some zipping punches out there. Has some good knees. Throws, in the clinch, she's good. And it's pretty powerful overall, well built. I think that she has some potential here in this flyweight division to pose a lot of girls problems. I'm high on Bueno Silva as well. I felt awful that I didn't win that last bet on her versus Montana De La Rosa. I was watching that fight again, man. They credited Montana with like 35 strikes in that third round. It's just ridiculous stuff by these stat guys. But just getting back to this fight, I think that the main thing is Bueno Silva, although she has good enough conditioning, she does not put the fight on her script too often. She'll get held against the fence. She doesn't move her head. She does throw some good strikes, but overall they're not really good combos. She throws like good overhands, good uppercuts, and stuff like that. But she like just walks forward sometimes. Is not in position to defend often. She could get double legged even here by Fiorot or just clinch takedown, like tripped up here, because she is just so willing to just go with fight as it comes. Um,
Take a 5 second break. All right, go ahead.
I think Fiorot here in the later rounds as well will just carry her speed advantage a little bit more and be able to land that left hand pretty often. So I like her here. It's gotten to a price where it's for me I don't really like laying more than north of 200, especially on some of these women's MMA fights all that much. So I'm maybe trying to look at a total here, maybe or Fiorot maybe by decision here, but it's not that great of a price considering the fact that, like I said, Bueno Silva does not move her head that often, and Fiorot does have some good power. So anybody that got in on this line under minus 190, very, very good bet in my opinion. I think that Fiorot will be able to control this fight, land that left hand, stifle the offense that's coming back her way from Bueno Silva, and win this fight maybe later on. I think she might even get maybe a knockdown here or have some top time as well. But she's got to watch out for some of those like I said, shots from Bueno Silva, those uppercuts, some of those kicks, knees, elbows. She's a nasty girl. She's looking to put damage on you, and I think this should be a very, very good fight and a good one to be on the main card.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the first time where Bueno Silva is actually going to be able to strike with an opponent. Pretty much all of her past fights in the UFC have involved a lot of grappling. And when she's on the feet, she's usually hurting women pretty badly. That's why the fight ends up going into the grappling. This is going to be the first time where she's going to be facing a striker that is willing to strike with her. And I think we're going to see a big difference between these women striking. We're going to see Fiorot with that more karate outside striking style, landing the better punches at distance, landing the better strikes while they're kind of far away from each other. But if Bueno Silva can get this fighting close, get it in the clinch, we're going to see Bueno Silva's Muay Thai advantage come there because she throws nasty knees and elbows. I mean, she butchered Marion Moraz's face in round 3. She landed all the damage in that Montana De La Rosa fight. So I think that it's going to be really interesting to see who gets the fight in their preferred striking range here. And both these women, I think, mostly struggle with grappling. We saw some bad grappling from Fiorot before the UFC. We've seen some bad grappling from Bueno Silva in the UFC. But it's going to be interesting to see if either woman attempts takedowns here. We did see Fiorot hit takedowns in both of her UFC fights so far, and she might do that here to exploit Bueno Silva because once Bueno Silva's on her back, she can throw up an armbar, has submitted opponents with that, but besides that, she can lay on her back for long periods of time. So I think there's actually a good chance that Fiorot could hit takedowns and keep top here. You could say the same about Bueno Silva. She could also look to exploit the grappling. So I just think considering that Bueno Silva isn't going to be very discouraged from the striking here. I think it's going to be the toughest striking test of Fiorot's career. I think the value is going to be in the dog here. I do agree with Ozzy with the Fiorot under minus 200 being a good bet because I will still be picking her to win the fight via decision. But I just think this fight's going to be real close in the striking. Either woman could get on top and get some significant top time here. And I think Bueno Silva, with her good cardio as well, she carries that power and speed late in the fight. She came back and won round three versus Miraz, came back and had a big round three versus De La Rosa. I think that this fight gets real close if it goes to decision. So Bueno Silva decision is probably worth the stab here, whatever those odds are, probably even the plus three or 400 range. But yeah, very fun fight, as Ozzy mentioned. Very deserving to be on the main card. And next fight in the lightweight division, we have Jim Miller minus 230 taking on Eric Gonzalez plus 195. Always nice to see Jim Miller on the card. Most fights in UFC history. I think the guy's, kind of a Hall of Famer, even though he never really was an elite level fighter. He's just been around so long, having great fights. I always like watching the guy fight, and he's got a pretty easy matchup in front of him here with Eric Gonzalez. Not able to find footage of Eric Gonzalez's most recent fights, but his fights from a few years ago, I would say, are pretty worrisome. The guy kind of has like a poor man's Tony Ferguson style where he walks forward and tries to land offense with his hands real low, but his defense is terrible. He eats strikes nonstop. And the guy's also a pretty bad defensive grappler. Got taken down by Humberto Banderay. Got held against the cage by Banderay there. And if Miller attacks the grappling here early, I think there's a great chance that he just pretty much instantly submits Gonzalez here, because I think Miller should be the much better jiu-jitsu grappler once he hits the floor. Gonzalez's wrestling isn't good. And even though Jim Miller has about 7 or 8 minutes worth of gas left in his tank, we've seen him hit a wall in the past 3 or 4 of his fights at that 7 or 8 minute mark. I still think he can get off early enough here, and if he grapples early, he could honestly finish Gonzalez in the first half of this fight. Obviously, if it gets into the second half of the fight, you do have to start to question that minus 230 price tag on Miller. But I think you'll have a better opportunity to live bet Gonzalez than his current plus 200 price tag. So honestly, this line is probably about right. Even though Miller is deep into his career, has been fading late in fights, I just think that Gonzalez has so many weaknesses that Jim Miller can still exploit them and win the fight, likely by submission. So I'll pick Jim Miller by submission in round 1 or 2 here. What are you thinking about the Eric Gonzalez here?
Man, this is an interesting fight. I was going to be all over Nicholas Mata in that fight that was supposed to happen last month. Jim Miller got COVID. I don't know how invested Jim Miller is. Now I know he's talking about being on like UFC 300. Not sure if he's going to make it there. He's getting he's getting a fight here in Eric Gonzalez, who, for being honest, Gonzalez probably should not be in the UFC. So it looks like to me a bit of a softball, that they're giving Miller here. But the thing with Miller is, man, you look at that Joe Selecki fight, he just is not active outside of that first round. He comes out, he's got some juice in him. But just I don't see the fire in him anymore. Gonzalez, for all his flaws, the thing is, like, if Miller cannot consolidate top time or lock onto a neck and finish the first one that he gets, I just don't feel about him at all. You know, 'cause if I mean,
Take 10 seconds. Should be good.
Gonzalez needs to know that he needs to drag Jim Miller into a later fight here. Obviously he's not that great. He'll leave his neck out there a little bit when he does try to offensively wrestle at range. He's not putting anything out there that Jim Miller hasn't seen. But he does have better cardio than him. I think that has to have some energy, a lot of energy, to be into the UFC now for the first time. But the fact that Jim Miller had COVID last month, and just his last few performances just leaves me a bit a bit skeptical about him winning a fight. But I'll say that, as a favorite, Jim Miller has performed pretty well. So when he is favored to win, he's usually pretty reliable. I'm not touching him here, even though I'm a big Jim Miller fan. He's a Northeast legend. Obviously, he's got almost 50 fights. So, I would hope that he locks down a takedown here and then looks to advance position shortly thereafter. But if this guy makes Jim Miller work, it could be tough sledding for him. And I do think the fight is favored to go the distance. I think they're banking on Gonzalez being maybe a little bit tougher to finish than most. So, I think given that, I know although that has been getting down, the under has been getting bet, but just given all these variables, if that Gonzalez line gets further, like we're in the juice era, so if we're getting like close to like 230, maybe I'll maybe consider Gonzalez, but no, otherwise I'm just watching it and rooting for Jim Miller to get a win and advance to 33-16. He's got that nice 666 percentage, like win percentage. So he needs to get off that bad number there. But that could be a ominous sign there. That 666 number. So I'll root for Jim
Good
Miller.
or bad, depending
Good
on
or
the
bad,
person. Yeah.
I'll root for Jim Miller, man. But I don't know, man. I don't trust this thing. It's a little fit. This is a little fishy fight for me.
Yeah, and Gonzalez, some props here. Gonzalez knockout plus 600. I think that if he wins, he's probably going to pour it on in the second or third round and find a finish. Miller sub 1 plus 700. And let's see, what is Miller sub 2? That could have some value as well. Plus 950. Those are all right. But yeah, hopefully Miller can pull off the upset here. That's going to take us to the co-main event. Incredible matchup, heavyweight division. We got Carneloss-Felipe minus 118, Andre Arlovski minus 102. You can start this one off, Ozzy. What are your thoughts on the co-main event?
Yes, with this co-main event, we've seen Carlos-Felipe 3 fights in UFC, I believe, or maybe four. I think it's three. 3 fights in UFC,
It's
three
4.
decision, four fights in the UFC, 3 decision wins, right? All being kind of a bit close, right? I think maybe one or two split decisions within that. And the thing with I'm looking at the matchup a lot more. Obviously this fight, a lot of people like the over. They like this to go the distance. The thought process mostly has been often that Andre Arlovski has a bad chin. But here against Felipe, how I'm looking at this matchup, just I'm talking over myself a little bit, but is Felipe, he fights in spurts for the most part. Like he'll throw some attacks at you, and then he'll be in his stance and he'll be like bouncing around, jiggling around and stuff. But he fights in spurts where I feel like a guy like Andre Arlovski, who is a just like a 50 fight vet as well as Jim Miller was last time. He's gonna be able to fill in those gaps and those spots where he's gonna be able to hit Felipe, counter Felipe, and just come back at him at times where like a guy like Jay Collier, who's just incredibly fat and out of shape, was not able to do, where Jorgen De Castro and who's the other guy that Felipe fought recently?
Tafa?
Tafa.
Jake
Like these are guys that,
Collier?
yeah, these are guys that they've got nothing in the third round. They've got they have no speed. They've got no counter ability. Like Collier's probably the best on the counter guys. He's a long weight who's like
Hold on, take 5. Go ahead.
a blown up middleweight. He's like 35% body fat. So I think
Yeah,
here.
don't disrespect Jake Collier, bro.
Listen, man, Jay Collier, he should have, if he was, 3% in better shape, he would have won that fight.
True.
And what's his name? Felipe is just very easy to hit. I hope that Arlovski brings out that back fist that he introduced Travis Brown to a bunch of times in the past. Because I'll tell you, that's a devastating strike, and I think it'll be there for Andre Arlovski here. I think he should be able. He'll have a reach advantage here as well. Felipe is 75-inch reach. What does Arlovski have? Arlovski's a big boy. He should have yeah, you got a
Probably
2-inch
longer.
reach advantage, 2-inch reach advantage. But he should be able to use the clinch here a little bit. And you haven't seen much of Andre Arlovski's ground game. But I'll tell you, nobody knew until he busted out that leg lock on Tim Sylvia, and we haven't seen that in a while. But you saw
In 15
Felipe
years, maybe.
15 years ago. That was one of the first UFCs I ever saw. But here Felipe, he looked like a fish when he was on the bottom versus the Moldovan fake monster Sergey Spivak. And Arlovski's only really been losing to like pretty top of the level heavyweight. So he's here at an even price against Felipe. You just have to think that Felipe is going to be able to land fight like goofy in that first. He has the power that Chase Sherman does, even especially in that first round, and he's not as big to be able to crowd Arlovski and make him uncomfortable in the pocket. He's a guy that he's like he wants to be in the middle of the octagon, in that space. And I think that Arlovski will get the fight that he wants here. I think he'll be able to he'll be able to land some kicks too on Felipe, and he's gonna be able to win this fight. I don't know if it's gonna be by finish, decision, no idea. But I'm siding with Andrei Arlovski. I think that he'll be able to keep pace with Carneloss-Felipe and land the better shots.
Yeah, you got to side with Arlovski here. I mean, it could be one of those mushes where everyone piles in on one side, but I'm a little skeptical if you're not picking Arlovski in this spot. I just feel like Carneloss-Felipe getting those past two fortunate decisions against Tafa and Collier, that's got to be influencing this line, right? If he lost one of those fights, or if he lost both of them, I think that we would see Arlovski as minus 130, minus 150 here. But because officially speaking, Carneloss-Felipe is on a 3-fight win streak, I think that's playing into this line here. And Arlovski is just a more versatile striker, in my opinion. I did a little research on Felipe in his last fight against Collier. He only threw 5 leg kicks. He was digging to the body nice with punches, but this guy doesn't throw kicks to the upper half of the body. He barely throws leg kicks. He doesn't throw knees or elbows. I mean, the guy is pretty much 95% boxing. And I just think that Andrei Arlovski is skilled enough of a fighter, so experienced, that he is going to be able to diffuse a 95% boxer at this point in his career. Arlovski has the leg kicks. He throws a lot more leg kicks and can really hurt his opponents with them. I think he has the better jab than Felipe as well. I think he's going to be longer. And I just don't think that Felipe is that good at pressuring either. Sometimes he walks forward on opponents, but he doesn't really cut off the cage well. He doesn't do much accumulated damage. And I think he had an extremely easy matchup against Justin Tafa, another fellow pure boxer. Sorry, there's some gigantic helicopter flying above my house right now. But he had an easy matchup against another boxer in Tafa, and he still made that fight life or death. And it was a split decision. A lot of people disagree with it. I think the majority of people have disagreed with back-to-back Felipe decisions. They thought Tafa and Collier should have won. So I'll be riding with my boy Andrei Arlovski here. I think the goes the distance in this spot is also good. Ozzy, I don't know if you mentioned that, but like minus 160 on FanDuel right now. I mean, that means that this fight ends by finish like 38% of the time. I think that's insanely high. Both these guys are durable. Neither guys are big one-punch knockout fighters. I hate betting goes the distance, but I think goes the distance should be like minus 300 here. I don't know about, what do you think about that, Ozzy?
No, Andrei Arlovski's gonna sleep this guy, man.
I mean, I think there probably is more knockout potential on Arlovski's side, so I guess I'll stay away. But I mean, Felipe knockout at plus 275, 300, that is a dog shit bet. You
Yeah, I
know,
don't think that's gonna happen. Like Felipe, the thing is, man, he just this is what I'm telling you. Like at range, like he's not landing that clean on these guys. He's really not, and I don't think he's gonna have that. He might have that confidence. He might have that confidence to come in on Arlovski. But I feel like Arlovski will be able to get the clinch, turn this guy, move this guy around. Like Arlovski, this is a different. When you get like to 40 years old, man, these heavyweights they got a different kind of strength. So I think that Arlovski be able to handle this guy pretty well if they do lock up.
yeah. And you did briefly mention Arlovski takedown. Hasn't landed a takedown in a while. 2018 was the last time he did. But I mean, Felipe did get completely dominated on top by Spivak when we saw him on bottom. So wouldn't be the worst idea for Arlovski to possibly mix in a takedown, but I'm not counting on it. I think even if the fight stays standing, Arlovski's going to outbox him. I've got a bet on Arlovski here. Gonna add some more if he keeps going up. So, everyone keep betting Felipe. That's cool with me, and we'll scoop up that Arlovski plus money. That's going to take us to the next fight, this shit show of a main event, short notice fight, women's featherweight division, where we have Aspen Ladd minus 131, Norma Dumont plus 111. So Aspen Ladd is getting rewarded with a main event here. She was supposed to fight 2 weeks ago, wasn't able to make weight. And there was a lot of controversy around that. She first weighed in at 141.5 pounds. Then she took her pants off and then weighed 137 allegedly. But if you watch that video, her legs were shaking and trembling so badly, the Nevada Athletic Commission couldn't get a weight on her for like 4 minutes. I've never seen a fighter in history stand on the scale as long as Ladd did in that fight. So the woman was clearly in bad shape, had a horrible weight cut. Things went pretty badly. And then here she is 2 weeks later getting in another fight with Norma Dumont in the main event. I don't understand that decision making at all. It's pretty stupid to me. But like Ozzy has pointed out before, it seems like the UFC has a quota for women's main event. And even though that this fight did not deserve to be a main event in a million years, here we are somehow with this being a 5-round main event. So just wanted to complain about this terrible fight they're making us watch as main event before we get into the actual matchup. But I think Ladd is really terrible. She is extremely slow, hittable on the feet, no real striking technique. She's not even that good of a wrestler. She throws that screaming ground and pound on top that I find extremely annoying. And I think Ladd is just some chubby weight bully. And now that she's going to be at 145, she's not going to be able to bully women as much. And Norma Dumont's probably going to piece her up when the fight is in on the feet. When it's in striking range, Norma Dumont is the much better striker, much more comfortable. And I think that Norma's probably going to be landing at will here versus Aspen Ladd. It's really a matter of Aspen Ladd's wrestling. Does Norma Dumont have the takedown defense to stop those takedowns? And Norma Dumont's takedown defense is extremely unproven. I mean, in her UFC career, we haven't really seen her face many takedowns. There's extremely little footage of her before the UFC. You'll hear people say that she got taken down in the Marina Moraes fight, which there was like some small footage out there. I mean, that fight was 3 or 4 years ago, and I feel like people have been relying on that fight, um, to come to fruition now, and for Dumont to show bad bottom game, but it just doesn't happen. Felicia Spencer wasn't able to capitalize on her grappling advantage. Dumont shut her down at range, and I think Aspen Ladd's takedown defense or her takedowns are so underwhelming and sloppy that I have a hard time picking her here. I think it could look really similar to the fight we saw last week with Dern and Rodriguez, where Ladd's going to have the grappling advantage here, but her wrestling and her striking, her footwork is all so choppy and sloppy that I think that she's going to have a hard time getting this fight down to the floor. And I'll definitely be cheering for my girl Norma Dumont to pull off the upset victory. I just think she's a lot more fun of a fighter to watch. Aspen Ladd's coming off a 2-year layoff and getting rewarded with a main event after missing weight. I mean, uh, Aspen Ladd just shouldn't even be in this opportunity. So I really hope she loses. I hope Norma picks her apart. But it also wouldn't surprise me if Ladd gets some easy bullshit takedown and some screaming, growling, ground and pound finish in annoying fashion. So I'll definitely be cheering for Norma here, but not enough confidence in her to actually bet on her. So no bets on this fight. Skip betting on this shit and put all your money on Andre Arlovski instead. So I'll pass this one over to you, Ozzy. Give us your thoughts on this high level main event.
Yeah, so this fight is at 145. I just want to touch on really quickly that the weight thing with Aspen Ladd in her last fight. Like, whoa! So she weighed in at 140, and then right after is when the whole debacle with the stripping down and then shaking on the scales. Right after, that's when that happened.
Yeah, well, apparently
There was no period of time in between that where she like went
no,
back.
no.
Okay,
Well, she weighed in with all of her clothes on the
I
first
saw that.
time at which makes no sense. 141.5 pounds, and I mean, I guess it's possible to lose a pound or two. I mean, maybe 2 or 3, but she went down 4.5 pounds
Right.
within like
So
5 minutes.
right out. Okay, so that was the thing. Like, and I saw what Misha Tate was saying too. I think that was all just it was all BS. Like her shaking on. I don't think she was that in bad shape there. Like with the whole shaking and stuff. Like, there's no way you go from. She was very, very calm when she first weighed in. She was like, oh, "Okay, I'm gonna take off all this clothes," which didn't make any sense, like you say. And then she just shaking on the scale, like as if having the bad weight cut. It was all bullshit. The girl's full of shit. If she's a weight bully, like you said, I think she's weighing like upwards of like 160 when she's out of camp and all. And I think a lot of the stuff where people say that she's really really great, in the grappling and stuff. She has some skills overall. She'll follow the hips a little bit well when she's fresh and all, but and she has some, takedown ability as well, but her striking is just terrible. Like she's got no head movement. She has, no real good, no real boxing fundamentals in terms of, combination punching, throwing kicks. Like off her kicks are non-existent overall. And then when she's going into the clinch, she has some clinch striking and all. But the thing is here, Norma, she's much better at range. But my biggest worry here is twofold. It's one, Norma did slow down significantly in that third round in that Felicia Spencer fight, but she whipped Felicia Spencer's ass like pillar to post. Anybody trying to say otherwise, trying to say that Felicia Spencer blah blah blah, like she should have won that fight. I mean, she looked terrible in that fight. Norma schooled her at distance overall with hands, kicks, everything. But this being a 5-round fight, a little bit concerning, given that Ladd, even though I do think she does not have the best cardio either, she has a pretty efficient style. She's just like, she has like one speed, like she does not vary like, right, gets punched.
Take five, real quick.
She's like, uh, she's like a robot on the, just she's not really trying to throw.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah, she's not really trying to throw too hard, so I think her style is a little bit more efficient overall. And Dumont, does mix it up a little bit better. I would hope that Norma, maybe she gets her own takedown here. I think that if she is on top of Ladd does not really have a bottom game to speak of. But if Ladd does get on top, she is opportunistic. She knows to go to like those back clinch opportunities and like that top turtle game and stuff like that. But I'm not touching this fight. I'm not gonna bet it. I would have taken Dumont at plus 130 or better. It was there for a little bit. It got bet down a little bit. So, I do think there will be a little bit more pop of Aspen Ladd money, but just you can't call me being one of them. This girl got iced as soon as she fought a girl that was her size. She has no striking defense. And Dumont should be able to punch her pretty cleanly in the face overall. And I do think that Norma has some, she's smart enough to be able to sprawl, stay away from the grappling when Ladd is shooting these telegraph takedowns, and hopefully make her pay when this is on the feet. But she needs to be efficient with her gas tank. She's been training for this 5-round fight for a while. She was initially fighting Holly Holm, which you got to be in shape to fight Holly Holm. So I hope that she has a cardio advantage here. But I do hope that she wins. I'd be rooting for her here. I don't think that a bet on either side. I'm not going to knock it too much. If someone says, hey, Dumont has a big striking advantage, I think she should be able to sprawl and brawl here. Can't argue with that. And if someone thinks that Ladd is going to be able to land takedowns, very much at will, and finish her, I can't argue with that too much. But you just haven't seen her shoot that many takedowns overall, consistently. So if Dumont is sprawling, I wouldn't be confident in Ladd being able to attempt 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 takedowns, and have to get multiple maybe in a round, or have to shoot multiple times in a round. So no bet for me. I'll probably pick Ladd just to maybe end up on top and put some damage on Norma maybe in some later rounds. But maybe the under here it has some potential because of how hittable Ladd is.
Yeah, some quick closing thoughts. I think the fact that Ladd ended her last fight with a win, a knockout win, I think is good for Norma here, because I said this the last time that she fought. She just strikes me as one of those women who doesn't really look to improve much. She won her last fight. She won by knockout. She probably thinks everything is all good in her mind, but she really showed a ton of weaknesses in that Yana Kunitskaya fight. I think she showed a lot more negative than she showed positive, and I think that she's probably going to walk away from that fight thinking, "Oh, we got the win, we got the knockout. Just keep doing what we're doing." But in reality, she's got a lot to work on, and I doubt that she really improved on a lot of that. I just don't trust her to make improvements. I don't think that she's a good fighter.
I did forget about that. Ladd's coming off, that ACL reconstruction, hasn't fought in over 2 years now. So a lot of red flags for me, but the price isn't crazy, so I
And what
can't
about
knock
this
a
new
bet.
weight class? She's fighting heavier. I could see her, maybe getting a little tired, maybe being a little more slow than usual, with fighting on 10 pounds heavier.
For
And
sure, I don't trust her in the slightest bit.
No, and I think this is actually almost our third time analyzing Loud on the podcast, yet she hasn't fought yet. The first time versus Chiasson, she got canceled like right as we were analyzing the fight. Second time we analyzed it, it got canceled. Hopefully, third time's the charm. Hopefully, the fight ends up happening. Although it would be hilarious if Ladd misses weight at 145. That would be the cherry on top, honestly. But
For
that's gonna do
sure.
it for this podcast. 11 fights. We went through it in about an hour and 10 minutes. Sorry about Ozzy's internet connection, just some weird, choppy internet. Nothing you can really do about that. But hope you all enjoyed the podcast. Hope you all been winning some money the past few events. We're 10 events down. I'm up like 13 units. Ozzy's up like 33 units or some crazy shit like that. So hope you all been enjoying the podcast. Thank you all for supporting. Make sure you're liking and following on whatever podcast app you listen to. And that's going to do it for this week. We'll see you all before the next UFC event.